I met a famous American investor that said, Aadit, I've got a guy from Harvard Business School that just sits in my office in Manhattan. You know what his full-time job is? He just looks at the earnings transcripts of all the public companies and looks at the CEOs that start talking about this, that is happening in the world, and hence my stock performance is bad. The second we start seeing CEOs get into that victim mindset, we short the stock.
What do you think is your unfair advantage?
I think what I lack in experience, I try to make up for in neuroplasticity. The younger you are, the faster you can learn. A lot of people come in and say, I've raised all this money from my dad. And my dad would find this very funny to hear, right? He did give us $1, right? He said, oh, you want to build a business? Good luck.
There are some people that say there are a lot of dark patterns on Zepto app.
A lot of people were forgetting that. We are actually the platform giving a lot of
And I was just seeing a shift from performance spends towards this branding spends. So let's say if you spend $100, how much of that goes to performance building and how much of that goes to brand building?
In the US and China, 90% of ad dollars are performance oriented. In India, the number is 40%. 60% of dollars are still branding dollars.
What's the most searched product?
Milk, bananas, etc.
And what are some surges that you see but you don't have supply?
There's a great opportunity for cosmetics brand for young females. People are asking for alcohol also.
If you were to give a 5-minute crash course on what you learned from PryvaSee, which changed the trajectory of Zepto.
There are some actually world-class American operators I've been lucky to get exposed to. Brian Chesky from Airbnb, Tony Shu from DoorDash, Jeff Wilkie from Amazon. Really high-quality guys. In India, you would not have heard of them.
Finding generational ideas is very hard. What will you say to a 22-year-old who's looking for this generational idea?
Find something you love building, go really deep into it, and you'll probably compound into creating some awesome value, not just for yourself, but for the environment around you. In India, we believe slow and conservative. In the US, they just believe in execution. Internet companies that create $1 billion of free cash flow in less than a decade from getting started, which has never happened before in India to date. And let me tell you something, if we don't do that, we will be left behind.
A lot of founders ask me to ask this. They run a D2C brand and they want to list at Zepto. And the challenge is, they're not able to do this. So if you were a founder, and if you really wanted to list at Zepto, what would you do, my friend?
So what I would do is,
we'll order anything on Zepto, Swiggy and this. And let's see what comes first. Hi everyone, I'm your host Shivank and we are part of the 01 Network by Zerodha. Together, we intend to bring you insights from the top thinkers in the field of entrepreneurship, technology and investing. I've watched so many interviews of you before doing this.
Yeah.
And I see an insanely articulate Aadit.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I genuinely want to know. And a lot of young folks are not that articulate.
Yeah.
Why are you so articulate? What makes you so articulate?
Yeah, I think basically I think I've gone through, without exaggeration, 2 to 2.5 decades worth of reading. So basically combination of documentaries, long form interviews, audiobooks over the past 4 to 5 years. Every waking moment that I'm not working, I'm just reading, right? In the car, on the plane, when I have 5-10 minutes between meetings, I will just be either finishing a documentary, listening to an audiobook. So I think the power of this freaking audio medium is that you can just get so much the amount of content that I've consumed, high quality content, and I curate it so that it becomes I curate my content diet basically well, right? The amount of high quality content that I've consumed past 5 years, if I go back 50 years, it would have probably taken 2.5 decades to read everything that I've read, right? I've read everything from The Art of War to
Hard things about hard things?
Yeah, hard things about hard things. Thinking in systems. Yeah, thinking in systems. I'm reading the documentary of Dave Packard, right, from Hewlett Packard. The biography of Dave Packard. So all these guys, it's a lot of just good stuff that I'm reading, and I think that's probably helped my vocabulary, I guess, right? But it's also just helped the perspectives that I have because I'm able to just pattern match. I think what I lack in experience, I try to make up for in neuroplasticity, right? The younger you are, the faster you can learn. So I'm just trying that.
And have you curated any list of these things for your personal benefit or something like that?
I mean, I don't have proper curated list, but I can like list out a few. I think the best ones are Some Sizes Fit All by Akhil Gupta from Airtel. He's one of the best operators in the country.
Wow.
What they built in Airtel, one
I
generation.
thought it's Gopal Vittal or someone.
Gopal Vittal is just second generation, but Sunil Mittal and Akhil were the two main guys that built out Airtel from 97 to 2018.
I'm hosting Sunil sir. He's also on the board of.
Sunil is obviously the founder and the legendary promoter, and Akhil was the CFO and he was there since day one. But both of them are obviously exceptional, yeah.
Who are these operators that you respect, Adit? That you want younger people to learn from? मतलब अगर ये लोग जिनसे आज आप सीखते हो, if these people were teaching at Stanford, you would definitely attend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best operators in India, I would say Akhil Gupta I really respect. I respect, I mean, obviously the, Neville and team from DMart have obviously pulled off something exceptional. Bhatia and Gangwal from Indigo, obviously very strong operators. Those are some of the best that I think of in India.
Have you met all these folks?
I've met
Rakesh sir,
I've met obviously Akhil Gupta. I've spent a lot of time with. I've met Neville. Spent a decent amount of time with him. I haven't met Rakesh Gangwal or the Bhatia family, but
would you like to meet them?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in touch. I think both of us are like I'm sure he's got a lot of crazy things to do. But I think there are like some actually world-class American operators that I've been lucky to get exposed to. So like, that's the DNA of being a Y Combinator company. I mean, you think of Brian Chesky from Airbnb, think of Tony Shu from DoorDash, Jeff Wilkie from Amazon, the early days. Everyone. I mean, there's so many of them. There's so many world-class operators that I've been lucky enough to learn from in the US. Even like Bom Kim from Coupang, Nico from Mercado Libre, David Velez, Nubank, really high-quality guys. In India, you would not have heard of them.
Have you met Radhakishan Damani sir?
I haven't met him, no.
Okay, got it.
Obviously, he's also world-class.
Was there a science behind choosing yellow, purple color behind Zepto, or it was just out of the blue?
Just out of the blue.
Okay.
But Zepto, the name, there's a bit of science too, but the color purple is out of the blue.
What's the science behind Zepto?
Zepto is the shortest unit of measurable time in physics.
Yeah, yes.
10 to the power minus 23 seconds. So that was just coming out of the time, so we said, let's name it Zepto. It sounds fast.
Interesting, very interesting. You remember filling your Stanford application?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been seared into my brain, for sure.
There was this question, if you were to write a letter to your future roommate, how would you define who you are?
Yeah.
And what mattered to you the most? अब इसको थोड़ा सा चेंज करते.
Sure.
आज अगर आपको एक लेटर लिखना होता to your potential better half,
sure,
explaining who is Adit and what do you care about the most, what that would be?
It's a very good question. I'd say, look, at like my heart of hearts, I'd like to be like a optimistic builder. I like building things, and I think that I like just getting really deep into stuff and like trying to make sure that I can add as much value as I can, but in like a very boring, simple answers that I'm just like a slight, and builder optimist, that's all. Like the Mark Andreessen has this essay, the Techno Optimist Manifesto, right? I think that's like the essay that I've read that I resonated with deeply, probably the most deep resonance I've had with anything that I've read in a very long time. So if anything, if you want to really know the answer to that question, probably read Mark Andreessen's Techno Optimist. That sort of fits my description, hopefully, or at least that's what I aspire to be. So.
And what do you care about the most at this point in time, Adit?
I care about primarily Zepto. That's like that's 99% of my mind space. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd love to just build Zepto. There are a lot of people that have taken a bet on us. A lot of investors, employees, most importantly, customers that are relying on us, and we want to just serve them well and scale and do a good job of both. So that's the idea.
So, you speak a lot of times about that you have figured out this idea, and you define this idea as a generational idea.
Yeah.
And you always say that finding generational ideas is very hard. There are a lot of young people like us who are looking for this generational idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What will you say to a 22-year-old who's looking for this generational idea, like Zepto?
Yeah, no, look, I think, see, to be very honest with you, we didn't start with the intent of building a business or let's create a startup and let's do an idea, right? Like, for us, it was, I would basically say that, like, find a love for building. If you're 22, just find a love for building, get excited about the idea of, coding or, physical world building, like manufacturing. If you're really just genuinely excited about that, right? And you're willing to go deep, put in the hours, right? You're willing to, like, be super humble, keep learning very quickly. And if you're ambitious and you want to do something for multiple decades, then you will my mind, you'll most likely stumble onto an opportunity that's worth that ambition, right? But it has to come from a very genuine place of building. Like, if you're coming in saying that I want to build a big company to get rich or to get famous, probably it's like the most painful, least efficient way to do that, right? You can probably have a much better odds of creating wealth doing literally anything else than entrepreneurship, because the odds are so low, right? But if you come from, like, a genuine place of, hey, I love building, I want to put something in the world, and you will naturally find something that meets that passion. And if you get really good at that one thing, you will most likely end up creating some sort of generation idea. Now, if you think about it, what we're doing is, we're delivering groceries in 10 minutes, right? On the face of it, doesn't sound like, curing cancer or sending a private spacecraft to Mars, right? Doesn't sound like that. But when you go deeper into it, if you create something really meaningful and valuable, and you go deep into it, you'll find that there's, like, big generational impacts of that. Like, today we directly or indirectly, there are 120,000 human beings that make a livelihood in Zepto, right? Delivery drivers, pickers, packers, truck drivers, our employees. And when you just zoom out and you say that, wow, like, this is a crazy little idea has hopefully positively impacted 120,000 people and millions of customers, right? And created so much value, then it becomes a lot more meaningful than on the surface of it. So I would say, long story short, just find something you love building, go really deep into it, and you'll probably compound into creating some awesome value, not just for yourself, but for the environment around you.
This is very insightful. But have you heard about this thing called Slipstream? So whenever birds are flocking, no, they flock in this pattern. And the first one who is moving creates a small vacuum gap, which makes it easier for the other people to follow.
Interesting.
So I want to know a couple of Slipstream ideas. Okay. So for example, when Amazon was being built, and it was very clear that, okay, this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar outcome.
Sure.
There were a lot of companies which were like Slipstream ideas which were catering to Amazon. For example, like a payment gateway or something like this. Because Amazon was getting big, these Slipstream ideas was also getting big. So in 2025, it's clear that,
I wouldn't say
quick
clear,
commerce is quick commerce, okay? Quick
could
commerce
be big, could be big. It could be big. Yeah, could be big.
So what are some Slipstream opportunities that you, because you have you are seeing everything in the quick commerce space.
Yeah, sure.
What are some clear gaps? For example, I think you recently mentioned about that F&B delivery.
I did, yeah.
So can you double click on that particular idea?
Sure.
And then maybe share a couple, 3, 4 more, 5 ideas.
Perfect. No, it's a great question.
That would be interesting.
Excellent question, yeah. So absolutely. Look, I obviously believe that quick commerce will be quite big, and there are always these short-term, sentiment shifts, right? Investors can be volatile at times, right? And in 2022, they wrote off quick commerce. In 2023 also was pretty much write-off. 2024, they were very excited about it. 25, they'll be negative. I think by second half of this year, they'll be back to positive when they see the numbers, right? So it's going to be back and forth. But if you, like, similar to what Amazon did, right? Like Amazon 2001, even 97, when they really started getting scale, everyone thought it was going to be the next big thing. Then 2001, stock went to $6, right? And people thought it was a write-off, and then eventually came back up, and then it had downward, and then it went back up, and now obviously it's a multi-trillion-dollar company, right? But I think if you've got conviction, long-term conviction, I believe quick commerce is like a meaningful, like once-in-a-generation opportunity, right, to create value. I believe so. Could be biased, I could definitely be wrong, right? But I think looking at the numbers objectively, that's true. And if you look at, like, some of the Slipstream ideas, it's a great term that you've introduced me to. I would say, so one, I posted about that F&V logistics chain. So if you look at it, there's work that developed countries have done decades ago on supply chains, right? So if you go to the US a couple decades ago, you read about Jim Senegal, you read about some of those guys. They did a lot of heavy lifting on just like basic supply chain infrastructure for the US, right? So do we have enough, ripened bananas? Do we have enough supply of like potatoes to handle any supply shocks on exports, right, or imports, sorry. There's a lot of good work that was done on the cold chain, on line haul, on efficient, even on just efficient like standardized processes to make sure that pricing and inventory management was top tier. There's a lot of these like problem statements that were solved many decades ago if you go to developed countries like the US or Japan or Western Europe. And I've seen that because I mean we've at least at a high level engaged with people that have run large scale fruits and vegetable supply chains, and the reality is that almost none of that exists in India today, right? And there's still lots of opportunities to create efficiency in that F&B supply chain because it's still running almost exactly as it was 7 decades ago, right, as we speak. And why that opportunity is important is because if we can, industrialize and digitize the F&B supply chain, I think we can create a huge amount of efficiency that will eventually go back to the end consumer in the forms of lower prices on their day-to-day sabji. So that matters. That matters to tens of millions of people, right? And so what are those types of problem statements that you asked me to double click? For example, the ability to forward buy or hedge still in fruits and vegetables is a very nascent field in India, right? So can I look at the fluctuations of commodities as someone that's procuring inventory in our supply chain, right? And use those fluctuations to hedge and get better prices for the customer, like forward buy basically.
I think McDonald's does that with all the potato farmers.
It's nascent. Right? It's nascent, absolutely. So if you look at, let's say, like you go to like leafies, for example, or you go to onions, you'll find it. Definitely they do it, but not at the scale that you might find it at, even on a relative basis, what you might find in the US. Nowhere close to that, right? Like you'll have like reserves, storage is built over a long-term period of time. Or for example, let's say quantity accuracy. Okay, so if you look at a coconut, for example, in the US, you'll be able to tell off the bat exactly how many milliliters are in that coconut and be labeled. Okay. And it's because the supply chain. I mean, I'm also not so deep into it, but like will either have been X-rayed or there'll have been automated weighing that happens through the chain. In India, you don't know. You have to flick the coconut, right, with the sabji wala, right, and you have to figure out how much exactly. How much am I going to get or not, right? So is it a good one? Is it bad? That doesn't happen really in you go to London, for example. You won't find that, right? It should happen here. Quantity accuracy matters, right? Or for example, if you look at ripening accuracy, if you buy in many Western countries or even let's say a place like Thailand, if you buy like an avocado is a very premium example. Yeah. Buy like let's say even a banana, right? They'll be able to tell you that how many days like you want it pre-ripened or you want it ripened. Obviously we do that here, but they'll be able to tell you that in 3 days this is going to be ready to eat, or in 2 days it's going to be ready, or this is ready to eat today, right? You'll find that demarcation. You won't really find that level of demarcation or sophistication in India. So ripening, like depth on ripening, depth on quantity control. Even if you look at, like forward buying, let's say, there's a lot of COGS excellence there. There's even there's depth that we can even build in. I think even imports is still fairly, an untapped opportunity, right? Like avocados, for example, I think we were one of the first platforms or like first channels for customers to get avocados at scale. Obviously, there were people that were there before us, but if I'm not wrong, I could be wrong, but I think like we very quickly became in the first year and a half, 2 years of operating, the largest, at least one of the largest, if not the largest seller of avocados in the country, right? Because it was just not introduced well, other than obviously in very like high-end circles. And just as an example, today obviously we run like a F&B supply chain that is quite meaningful, right? We're doing about 24 lakh units a day in an F&B supply chain, most of which is direct to farmer, right? And so we're seeing all these things. I'll give you another example is, let's say, pricing transparency across the market, right? Like what is the, when you go to a mandi, there are multiple prices that will be on the market, right? And there'll be a high end, there'll be a low end, there'll be what's called an MTP, right? The most traded price on that day. So there's no real like digitization of that's being done. Obviously people have tried it, there's a government portal, etc., but it's not really, I've gone through that myself, right? It's not very accurate. And so you don't really know what is the right price to be procuring something at on any given day. And that is not just on the buy side, it's even on the sell side where the farmer doesn't know if he's getting the right deal or not, right? When he's offloading his harvest to anyone, right? Whether it's a retailer, whether it's to the local market, etc., he doesn't know. So we're trying to create software. We launched this thing called Zepto Bloom a while ago, and now we're iterating on it to create like a very well digitized ledger of pricing, right? And if we can do that, then we can make our sourcing more efficient also and cut the inefficiencies where we see that we are off market or we are on market or we're too aggressive or too low. So there are all these problem statements, right? But long story short, from like ripening to quantity control to price transparency to hedging and COGS excellence. All of these things you'll find in some form or the other in some developed country, right? And it's being done in India, like you correctly pointed out, right? There are people like McDonald's, or I'm sure people like, the large retailers.
Ninja Card company that is also doing some
Absolutely
crazy efficiencies.
So it's definitely not zero, but it can be 10x of where it is today, right? So there's a lot of good work that people have done. I think that we need to 10 to 50x it if we really want to build it, because today, well over 90% of fruits and vegetables comes through disorganized supply chains. I'll give you one last example.
Please.
Right? You look at mangoes, right? There is still a carbide problem in the ripening of mangoes in India, like a decent carbide problem, right? Which you won't find in lots of other countries, because like if you go to other mango growing countries, it's, at least my limited understanding, is less prevalent because they've built strong checks and balances on that. But we've not done that at scale yet. But let's say Zepto does that. I'm sure our peers also do it. I'm sure, let's say, some of the companies you mentioned do it. But at scale, 90% plus of people still have this problem, right? Like you could have a carbide infected mango come to your household realistically in 2025 in India, which we need to solve. And that's what hopefully we'll play a small role in solving. That's why I put out that message there.
What are the most tastiest mangoes that you have ever eaten?
I'm
Don't say Zepto Center.
I'm a big fan. Of course, I am a big fan of Alfonso mangoes. I get them on Zepto every year. We're launching them soon, so get ready for that. Alfonso mangoes are, I think we do a decent job, but let's see what your viewers say.
I was just looking at this. Is India a net mangoes importer or exporter?
I don't know off the top of my head.
But I was just reading about the 600 acres of mango farm that I think Reliance has. Is there any way that any normal guy can get the mangoes? Because I was just hearing that they export everything.
I have no idea. I'll look into it. Very good point you're bringing up there.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I just want to go double deep on a couple of things.
Please.
So this F&B idea was very interesting. Although मुझे दोबारा सुनना पड़ेगा.
Yeah.
There were certain things that I need to understand. But so let's create a 2x2 matrix.
Sure.
So a dumb guy with a lot of money. So one is dumbness and one is how much money do you have?
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
Opportunity in quick commerce could be, let me open a dark store. I'll take a franchise. I'm a dumb guy.
I think the very, very smart people that do that also.
Okay, okay.
But I get it. I get the idea. Simple business.
Then there is a smart guy with very less money who knows how to play with the algorithms, who knows how to, get the database of so many photos of, how fruits ripen, and then maybe create a model of exactly telling you when this particular apple or banana or mango is going to ripe. What are some other problem statements that you are seeing in the quick commerce world?
So yeah, the other meaningful problem statements in quick commerce right now, you've got, I think we've already publicly put it out there, right? We run an advertising business that's over 1,000 crores annualized and growing pretty quickly. And yeah, we're already becoming one of the largest publishers in the country in terms of ad revenue. And we think by end of next year, end of this year, it'll be even more meaningful. But the long and short is that there are now an influx of hundreds of brands that are excited about quick commerce. The ad stack is very different, even from traditional e-commerce, right? And we've built out our own in-house ads engine, right? Like similar to what Amazon has built out. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do to build something as excellent as they have. But if you look at it, like the ingestion stack, the bidding engine, attribution, automated keyword suggestion, all the things you'd expect in a great advertising platform we've built out. And now brands are starting to get used to our ads platform. And there is an opportunity to build consulting / agencies that are dedicated for quick commerce, because I think there's, realistically, if I had to look out 5 years, there's probably going to be billions of dollars of ad revenue that new age and established FMCG brands are going to start spending on quick commerce. Without it, there's about, tens of billions of dollars of CPG or, consumer brand advertising dollars that are spent. If you look at it, you look at the percentage of ad dollars and the spend in the US and China, 90% of ad dollars are performance oriented, as in ROAS, or they look for a return for every dollar that they spend. In India, the number is 40%. 60% of dollars are still branding dollars, right? So billboards, IPL campaigns, etc., which is great, right? But if you look at it, a sophisticated consumer brand in the US is really spending on the return that they could get. Let's say even a Unilever US is more interested in the return that they make for every dollar that they spend, because the thesis is that the best way to get my brand to be engaged with the consumer is to get them to try it. Right? Once they try it, that's the deepest brand relationship I can build with the customer, especially if they like the product, right? So what most developed consumer ecosystems do is that they're just obsessed with reducing the cost to get their product in front of the customer, right? Which is obviously what most people know as CAC, right? And so quick commerce basically represents one of the lowest CAC channels possible over time. And it makes sense also because it's a at the point of purchase platform, right? You don't have to advertise on a billboard and then you search for it on your phone. It's just like you click and you buy, and you see the advertisement right there, right? So the funnel is much more stitched together. And so if you believe that 40% number has to go to 90%, that ad dollar number, because brands are going to be more and more focused on efficiency as we scale, and you believe that quick commerce is going to scale, going to become a meaningful platform for consumer brands, then you can probably underwrite that there's going to be billions of dollars of advertising that's spent in quick commerce in the next 5 years. And if you build expertise there, you could make a good amount of money or create value for new age brands, established brands. There's an opportunity there, and there are some people that are trying to pursue it.
This is very interesting, and I'll come back to this opportunity question. But isse pehle, thanks for bringing this branding spend versus the performance spend. I was just reading a couple of case studies on your true friends, and I was just seeing a shift from performance spends towards this branding spends. So I want to understand at this point, what was the, so let's say if you spend $100, how much of that goes to performance building and how much of that goes to brand building? And have you seen the shift from the 0 journey of 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to 100 journey of Zepto?
Yeah, so look, I think there's a little bit of perception out there that like these brands overspend on, or these companies overspend on, or spend more on brand than performance. I don't think that's the case. Like at least in my industry, most consumer internet companies, not just directly in quick commerce, but fintech, e-commerce, etc., you'll find, or even let's say ride sharing, food delivery, etc. Most of the dollars spent will be performance, right? Even though what you'll hear about and see about when you talk to the startup community, people will talk about, oh, this brand campaign, that brand campaign. But I can guarantee you that if you actually look at the Excel files of the budgets, most of them will go into those tactical, static Instagram, Google ads, mostly.
Okay.
Most brands, I'm fairly confident. I mean, I could be wrong, but at least like from the numbers that I have of peers and of other industries, it would probably be the case. To give you a sense on our end, like, look, we spend about 90% of our dollars on performance marketing dollars, right? It's as simple as that. Google, Facebook, there are other channels, right? Like there are great platforms like InMobi, right? That also supplement and are giving us channels to get performance style results, right? So I think $90 plus would be performance, $10ish would be brand. And what I believe in, I think we've got an excellent brand team. I believe in doing organic customer love initiatives that don't cost much, because you can't attribute or at least I'm yet to, and if anyone can help me with that, I'm yet to rigorously attribute the CLTV or the lifetime value I get from a brand dollar, right? But there definitely is some, right? That's why smart people are in the brand industry. But if I can't attribute it, then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, fine. How do I make it as low of a cost as possible and just mainly put effort? So I know that whatever the lifetime value I get, whether it's 1, 10, 100, 0, doesn't matter, because the equation will still make sense if the cost is low, right? And so what we focus on the branding side is how do we just do customer love initiatives that can get traction without spend. So for example, this Holi, we gave out gift boxes, right?
Yeah,
we gave out almost 1 million gift boxes, right, across the country to customers, all funded by our brand partners, right? It's an excellent opportunity for them to sample and get, like, let's say if I'm launching a new product, let's say I'm Sugar Cosmetics, for example, right? Great brand. I'm launching a new product, I want people to try it. I'll do a small sample in the box and it'll be part gift, so it'll give good consumer goodwill, plus I'm going to get trials for that product, right? Or a food brand, right? For example, let's say a new packet of chips ITC is coming out with, for example. So we gave these gift boxes, couple ₹100 worth of gift boxes, all samples funded by the brands. Great opportunity for them to get in customers' doorsteps, and great opportunity for us to create goodwill.
And Indians love free gifts. It's a win-win-win situation.
Indians love free gifts, right? And so now if you go on social media, you'll find a lot of people positive love talking about that, and it costs us nothing, right? It obviously was effort, and it required a lot of coordination and a lot of logistics work, but it got done. So that's what I believe in branding. I think that those are actually quite powerful.
Whose idea was this to actually do something like this?
We had a tradition of doing it, I think 2.5. When we started the company, whenever we launched a new store, we used to give out gift boxes to the first set of customers, and I used to write little notes in the very early days, like 3.5 years ago. And then that just sort of became a tradition, and the marketing team took it up, and now it's being run by some excellent folks in the category team that have built a lot of machinery around it. So yeah, so our category team, there's a dedicated pod for that.
Again, coming back to the opportunity wala thing, I want to go double deep on a couple of things. So this, let's say if there is a guy who wants to who wants to open a dark store, okay, who wants to franchise a dark store from Zepto, how much that guy will make?
I would say, so it depends on how you run the dark store. It depends on the location that you're in, the capital you invest, etc. But you could realistically make over time and with a certain amount of investment, but you could realistically make like $1.5 lakh a month of net income, right? Realistically, on top of the assets that you own, etc. But yeah, I mean that's a realistic outcome, and we've done that for a couple hundred franchisee partners right now. And we run, I mean, a lot of these guys are small mom and pop franchisee partners that are starting a business in some cases for the first time, right? And so far it's gone reasonably well. They've seen some growth. Good amount of them are profitable, and they're making a little bit of money. So it's great.
So this was one set of opportunities. Tell me a couple of opportunities on the brand building side. I want to understand what's the category where you see a gap, where a young founder who wants to build first let's start this. Abhi Holi pe, what was the highest search product on Zepto?
Pichkari, everything that all the I put out a post on the metrics, right? But yeah, like we grew like 10.7x on Thandais, if I'm not wrong, and like, all these, I mean, classic Holi SKUs. Like, what do you expect?
And in normal days, what's the most searched product on Zepto?
Milk, bananas, etc. Milk.
And what are some surges that you see, but you don't have supply? You're seeing demand, okay, people are searching about it, but you don't see...
Pharmacy, for example. People are searching for, let's say, crocin.
Okay.
We don't sell crocin, for example. People are asking for, let's say, lots of things. Alcohol also, right?
Okay.
Alcohol is also commonly searched for, right? Beer, wine, which obviously we don't sell. But yeah, those are some of the...
Give me a couple of more categories like this that people search, but you don't have supply for. And
we don't have mainly, I would say pharmacy, alcohol, I would say some like nutraceuticals in some cases that we're building on. There's a lot actually. I mean, there's large appliances. So if you search for a device, like I want to buy a phone, like now we're just trying to scale phones and devices, but like, or if you want to buy like something like an air conditioner, for example, right? Like people search for that, but we don't have it. So those sorts of things. You find large appliances. Even obviously, let's say in categories like apparel, for example, people will search for a brand like a Louis Philippe, for example, that we won't have, but now we're trying to bring on board. So yeah, so that's basically the idea. So everything from like tail apparel to like pharmacy to alcohol to like basic personal care, etc. You'll find a lot. Cosmetics.
Two things here. So let's say if you find a category gap, do you directly go to the company and figure things out? Or is there an opportunity for a young person to actually list like they can do on Amazon?
Yeah, there is a definite opportunity to build a brand, right? It's basically the opportunity to build a D2C brand. You absolutely can. There are lots of categories where there are good opportunities on the market right now. Let's say, for example, skincare is blowing up with minimalist. Obviously, it's competitive, but there's still use cases to be built there.
So, for example, there are so many people who are looking for these ideas, who are looking for these opportunity gaps, and you have a clear bird's eye view.
Data, yeah.
So, is there any way, Aadit, where 20 people who are looking for these ideas, you can just give them or tell them that these are clear category gaps that are maybe too small for us, but they are too big for you to create a D2C brand out of it?
Sure. No, look, I'll tell you, like, look at it this way. Definitely there's data, right? To be very honest with you, there's definitely data on like opportunities and everything from skincare to packaged foods to beverages. But let me be very candid, right? I don't think that when you're starting off, the right way to look at it is to look at some like macro data, right? Like what is Amazon or Zepto's search volume for ABC, right? That's one way to do it. If you really want to start a brand from scratch, the question you need to ask yourself is what's the problem that I'm going to solve?
Right.
So what I'm going to come and tell you is that, for example, there's still scope for a cosmetics brand that's skincare forward, right? And you'll find that, and there are obviously people that have done a very good job of that in some use cases like minimalist, right? I'll also tell you that there's a great opportunity for brands that are, let's say, building just another example in cosmetics brand for young females, right, that are early teens, that where their parents don't want to give them cosmetics that are adult for obvious reasons, but still they want to have an opportunity to embrace their femininity, right? And that's
Very
a good thing. It's a great thing, right?
Yeah.
So you'll find all these insights. But the thing is, it's not really the data, it's talking to customers. That's far more valuable in the early days. Obviously not our scale right now, then it matters, but what I would do if I were someone like in this archetype that you're talking about, a young boy or girl that wants to just like figure out something exciting, I would honestly go talk to people and say, what is the problem that I can solve in a specific space that isn't being solved well today, and how would I do it differently? That problem first mindset, and then you iterate on a product over a good period of time and until you see like real customer love. That's how you build something meaningful. Because look, if there's an insight that is very well established in my data, to be honest with you, it's probably already too late. There'll probably already be a very competent set of people at Unilever or at Procter & Gamble or at a great FMCG firm like them that are already working on it. So your real advantage is to be able to think differently and talk to people on the ground and really pick up insights as they're developing, right? So yeah, that's the way that I'd look at it, if that's helpful at all.
Very interesting. The third category of opportunity. If a young guy comes to you and say, give me a problem statement of your life where you would right now pay for to solve that, what that
My
would
life?
be? Yes, for your life. Not Zepto.
The biggest problem that I have in my life is the the commute from whenever I need to take a flight from where I stay in Bangalore to the airport, right? That's like the most painful thing that I have to go do, 1 or 2 times a month. But yeah, I think that's about it. I would say, do I have any like really meaningful problems that are worth?
I think that the travel problem will be sorted by 26 or 27. There are so many companies. There is E-Plane. There is so many companies. It's just solving for the
I'd
thing.
be very happy if that happens. I would say, okay, I'll tell you one.
Yeah?
Actually, I'll tell you one, and there's a company that's trying to solve that. But I've got too many places that I have to keep track of communications, right? I've got email, I've got Slack, I've got WhatsApp, yeah, LinkedIn, I guess, right? These 4. And there are like, I'd say the first 3, email, Slack, WhatsApp, but there are like good, important communications that come up.
And you
I
miss
have to, yeah, and I keep trying to like, I have to check Slack for this, I have to check WhatsApp for this, and they all mix up together. I'd rather have one interface where all of that is happening.
This is really a founder's problem.
Yeah.
Is Super DM solving for that?
I'm not familiar.
Which company is solving for that you mentioned?
I've heard of a company called Beeper in Silicon Valley that is being worked on, but I don't know if it's still being run. But there was a startup 2-3 years ago that was working on it.
This is very interesting. Very interesting. Any other problem in your life?
I think that, I mean, I love reading, right? And I think that if I can get a
Summary?
Yeah, summaries would be great, like, but much richer summaries. I would say like probably that. In general, yeah, maybe like a repository of like classes that are taught in colleges that I can like view. I don't know if that's possible, like JSTOR, they have like the research stuff, but like maybe there's like a way to get like access to college lectures that are interesting. I don't know, things
Very
like that.
interesting.
But I mean, that's about it. That's all I got.
What do you think is your unfair advantage, Adit?
Humility, at least I have the humility to keep learning as much as possible, and I think speed of learning. I think those 2 things: the willingness to learn and to be taught, and the rapid ability to adopt new learnings. Those that's the best part. And that's why I told you this right before the interview. Like one of my mentors recently told me that, Aadit, what you make up, for whatever lack of experience you have, you make up for it in neuroplasticity, which basically means you can learn. You're very young, you can learn much faster than most people can, right? Because you're like any young person's brain is actually wired in a way where they can pick up new concepts much faster than, let's say, someone who's 40 or 45, right?
You were in 2021 cohort of YC, right?
Yeah, winter 21.
Let's say, if you were to give a 5-minute crash course on what you learned from YC,
Yeah.
or basically what were certain pinpoints conversation which changed the trajectory of Zepto, what that 5-minute crash course would be?
Look, Y Combinator is basically like the world's best startup incubator. Think of it like the Harvard of startups, right? Where some of the best ideas in the world are started as just ideas on a piece of paper, right? Like for example, Airbnb was started as just a little bit more of an idea at Y Combinator over a decade ago. Now it's obviously like almost a $100 billion company, right? Or I think more, right? It's unbelievable. DoorDash also $75 billion company. Coinbase, which is like a $50 billion plus company. You'll find some exceptional companies even in India that were started essentially or germinated at Y Combinator, like great companies like, Meesho and Razorpay, Grow.
Razorpay,
Yeah, absolutely. And we were lucky enough to be part of Y Combinator as well. We got started there. And yeah, I mean, I think basically that entire experience was like 3 months, very intense, 18, 19 hours a day, work, code, deliver, orders. That's pretty much all that we did. And you just get access to some of the smartest operators in the world, right? Like the people that were, that were mentoring us almost on a daily basis, like the chief product officer of Yahoo, and like Jared, who was the founder of Scribd, which is one of the largest ebook apps in the world. So all these exceptional people were just giving us their time and talking to us on a daily basis, which was amazing. And I think the biggest, a lot of crazy insights that came from that, but I think the practical ones were talk to customers, ship fast, but most important, the thing that actually changed our trajectory was look at retention. Your life is all about retention, customer retention, basically. Is a repeat rate happening? And that customer retention depth is what gave us conviction that this concept of delivering in 10 minutes and doing it with the right selection and the right pricing and the right quality was actually working. So yeah.
Where was the idea of the Zepto Cafe came from?
I think it came from the same thing that you mentioned, right? We looked at the search data.
Okay.
Customers were searching for coffee, tea, snacks, buns, all the other day-to-day stuff. They just thought, can I get snacks delivered in 10 minutes? And there was a lot of organic traction for that. And so we said, okay, great, let's experiment with it. And we experimented with it, over 2 years ago in a Lower Parel dark store. And we, started tweaking with like delivering coffee and snacks, and customers started loving it. And then we said, wow, let's just keep scaling it. So it's pretty exciting. I think it's on track to becoming, pretty meaningful force to reckon with in Indian QSR in food. And we're excited to keep scaling it.
There are certain things that you want to copy the true friends, and there are certain things that you want to do differently. So how do you know that, okay, these are the things that I'll copy my true friend is winning the examination, so I'll just copy his answer sheet. And there are certain things that I want to stand out. How do you do that?
Look, it's first principles, right? We have like our own philosophies. It's like, let me put it this way. So do we study what our competitors do well? Absolutely we do. Do we learn? Absolutely we do. How do we decide what's worth learning and what's not worth learning? I would say iteration and like good faith, low ego, first principles conversations, being able to admit when they do something better than we do, even though we don't like to hear that. The guy that runs whatever thing that is there would not like to hear that, but it's a good, candid, open and honest culture to be able to say, okay, there are these things we really do well, we're like way better than ABC, on like Zepto Cafe, for example, we're far ahead of these guys, right? And that's fine. I'm sure they're going to catch up to it. Or let's say we do this really well on fruits and vegetables, or we do this really well on assortment, right? But there'll be places that we don't do well. And so can you have an open and honest culture where you can say that openly? I think we do, right? So some people like it, some people don't. We definitely do have that. And then within that, you have a good faith debate that's not biased. And you also just iterate, you run experiments, you see what the data says, especially what customers are saying, and then if it's working, it's working, and then we go ahead and do it. So I think it's just logic, first principles, iteration, and if it works, then we'll borrow it. If it doesn't work, then we won't borrow it.
There is this company which was started in 2010. This is food company, which is at current ARR of approximately, they did 1,420 crores last year. And then there is Zepto Cafe, which was just started
recently. We started scaling effectively this year,
which is now doing what ARR?
We put out 100 million roughly now.
So tell me, there are companies which take so many years to do this particular thing. I want to know the real insight behind how are you able to pull off this crazy thing?
For sure. Look, I think, the beautiful thing about these platform businesses is that once you have like a large retained transacting customer base, you can add new services and products, and you already have tens of millions of customers on day one.
So you upsell, cross-sell, whatever?
Exactly. So I don't have to acquire millions of customers, right? I already got millions of people that open the app every day. I just put in a button of Zepto Cafe and boom, 10 years of marketing is done, right? Because it's like it's a very powerful advantage to have a captive consumer base. And candidly, that was an advantage that we were up against in the early days of building Zepto, right? With players that had already built out very large customer bases on day one, but we've been able to overcome most of that, I think. And I think if you look at so that's one. You can layer out all these new exciting experiences on top of a well-run platform business, and I think that's what's happening here. That's one. Second piece is also, look, it's a mindset thing, right? I think I've been lucky enough to have exposure to some of the best operators in the US, right, for example, or some of the best operators in other like large internet ecosystems like Latin America or Europe, and they're hyperscalers, right? They don't, in India we believe no, slow and conservative versus fast and reckless, right? We mean slow means conservative but successful, fast means reckless, right? In the US they just believe in execution, right? And so they think that if you can build, and they have built, internet companies that create $1 billion of free cash flow in less than a decade from getting started, which has never happened before in India to date, right? From scratch. And let me tell you something, if we don't do that in the next 5 years in Indian capital markets, we will be left behind, because every other major capital markets environment, Latin America, West Asia, Western Europe, the US, even China, of course China, right? Everyone has been able to pull off innovative companies that in less than a decade have done $1 billion of FCF from inception. And you know these names, right? Think of like Airbnb, think of DoorDash, think of Nubank in Brazil, think of Mercado Libre, right? Think of Coupang, think of all these companies, right? They generated, they burnt capital, they did it in a disciplined fashion, they pulled back that burn, and then they're able to generate huge amounts of profits today. And in less than a decade, they've created huge amounts of shareholder value, right? That is, at that scale, and I'm talking about almost $1 billion of FCF, or like 8,000 crores of free cash flow, is still yet to be done, right? In India, in internet, right? With few exceptions, right? But like even let's say the really profitable bootstrap startups are yet to have achieved that, right? That kind of scale and that endurability of cash flows that you can constantly keep reinvesting into new and new innovation, right? Which is basically how you get Amazon creating or let's say Google creating large language models, or Facebook creating large language models, or Amazon creating cloud computing, because they have the cash and the cash generation ability and the talent and the data to innovate, right? Which doesn't happen in Indian companies because we don't have great internet companies. So this idea of scaling fast is in the US, it's not considered reckless if it's done well, right? And it's actually not only considered not reckless, it's considered required if you want to build a great internet company, right? But yeah, obviously, if you want to build, let's say, a company that sells makeup, right, or you want to build a manufacturing company, great. But I think India right now, if we want to like fast track 2.5 centuries of development, which is what the US has basically gone through, if we want to do it in less than a century, then we're going to need, capital to scale well with strong technology systems so that scale can be managed well, and like very good execution that so far is yet to happen. So I basically believe in excellent execution plus fast pace, scale, and capital for sure can be put together to not only create scale and value much faster, but also do it profitably and well if it's managed well. And it's not like it's some sort of crazy messiah concept I'm bringing up. Just go to US, China, all these other places. They've been able to do it. Why can't we?
But I see a catch-22 there. Until and unless you won't have cash flows and the capital to invest in that fast pace, and you see the catch-22 situation. How do you break that?
Yeah,
as a young person who wants to build something. Now,
it depends on what you want to build. Like, see, look, the way that we are building candidly, it's not for everybody, right? It is a high TAM, high stakes business. Like, we're not building Trend or First Cry candidly. I know those are exceptional companies, but they're built with a different mindset, right? We're building Airbnb, right? Like, it's with that mindset, or we're building Meituan, right? So when you think from that level of clarity, right, that actually I'm not really building a 25% compounder, 2-3% EBITDA to 5% EBITDA to 7% EBITDA kind of business. And there are plenty of exceptional businesses that are built that way. But unfortunately, that's not our business, right? Like, I think we will be, so in my case, which is not the case, candidly, that might be very relatable for your viewers writ large, right? But I think that we are a high TAM, capital intensive business, but I also see like the ability to actually generate significant cash flows from the capital that we're investing, right? So to do what we're doing, you need to basically do what I did, right? Which is prove the model, raise a little bit of capital, get more scale, prove it again, get more scale, raise more capital, prove the business model again, raise more capital, etc. And that's like a different, and then eventually you get to such a high scale where you're able to create so much capital within the business that you can generate profit and keep compounding and growing on your own, right? Which is like, I mean, a great example of that would be Bharti Airtel, right? They burned capital for almost a decade, or actually half a decade, right? I know obviously from an EBITDA perspective, they didn't burn, but from a cash perspective, they invested capital, right? And initially for like, if you look at the stock price, it was 7 years, it was flat. And that was while the market was growing, the stock market was growing, Bharti was like this, and then suddenly it's a $120 billion plus company, right? It's just gone very recently because now they're harvesting that investment into generating cash flow, right? Which is great. And so I think that it's a similar kind of business. So look, if you want to build telecom or you want to build e-commerce, right? That's a very different mindset, right? It's a little bit crazy. But if you want to build a food brand, you want to build, and it's fantastic, right? You want to build a specialty retailer, for example, great, right? That's a phenomenal. There are very successful companies that are built that way. But we are trying to, who knows if we get there, I think we will hopefully, but we are trying our best to really build a $50-60 billion company, right? That's what we're trying to do. Hopefully we succeed.
Two very important questions. When you say a 60, 70, $80 billion company, you need to have a market like that, right? And I want to have a healthy debate on this because I was just looking at the numbers. India की population 145 crores है, but 100 crore people of our country, सरकार बोलती है कि 80 करोड़ लोगों को तो हम फ्री का राशन दे रहे हैं.
They have no discretionary income, yeah.
100 करोड़ के पास discretionary income है ही नहीं. If you see the government data of income tax return, जहाँ पर हम देखते हैं मिडिल क्लास जो 5 लाख से 1 करोड़ रुपए का टैक्स दे रही है, 10 साल में उनके पे कोई ग्रोथ नहीं हुई है. And then there is top 1% of India which is growing.
Totally. So I'll tell you.
अब वो छोटे से market में, that shallow market में, how can?
Yeah. So I'll give you a sense. You've got grocery and household essentials consumption in India. There are different reports that have different like estimates, but this is roughly what you'll find consensus numbers to be. Grocery and household essentials consumption in India is 600 billion FY23. Okay, and this is not like electronic sector. I'm just taking day-to-day household essentials. Call it food, FMCG, home and personal care, detergents, etc. Some basic cosmetics. Basically, your day-to-day stuff, stationery. It was about 630, 640 billion FY23, projected to grow 8% CAGR for the next half a decade, right? So basically FY29, it goes to about 800 to 850 billion, okay?
This is the basic assumption that we are making.
So this is consumption. Oh yeah, even if it doesn't grow, let's say it doesn't grow, let's say zero, okay? So 600, it's like whatever, FY23 grows 0%.
Okay.
Okay. $630 billion. Even in $630 billion, how many cities, towns, villages, settlements exist in India? Tens of thousands.
Right.
Rural Jharkhand to Bombay, there's like hundreds of thousands of settlements. But just the top 50 settlements, 50 cities, 50 to 60, account for about 40% of that consumption. ठीक है? 240, 250 billion, assuming zero growth, 40 to 50 billion. And just the top 40 million households, in those top 40 to 50, just 40 million households, which is like they would call it less than 10% of the population, 7-8% of the population. Right. They account for well over 100 billion, 130, 140 billion dollars that's spent today. So just 40 million households, just grocery and household essentials consumption, in just the top 50 to 60 cities is $140 billion today with zero growth, right? You want to create a $50 billion company and that compounds, what do you need? I would say about 25 billion-ish of top line, 3.5% EBITDA, right? Some net working capital negativity, you get into about $1 billion of FCF, and that you can trade at 50-60 times, grow 20-25% year on year, you'll trade at that level. So I have to basically do 25 to $30 billion of top line in a market that's 140 billion minimum, right?
Okay.
That's not including growth, that's not including new categories, that's not including, maybe going a little bit lower into the spectrum. I'm talking about the top 40 million households. So I personally have a little bit of a different philosophy than I think most of the folks that build businesses, right? I don't really believe that the macro and all this really affects you at all. Like if you're doing that, I met a really well, I won't name his name, but I met a famous American investor that said, Aadit, I've got a guy from Harvard Business School that just sits in my office in Manhattan. You know what his full-time job is? He just looks at the earnings transcripts of all the public companies and looks at the CEOs that start talking about the weather or start talking about, this, that is happening in the world, and hence my performance is bad. The second we start seeing CEOs get into that victim mindset, we short the stock. Right, basically, like I said, that's the American way of thinking,
Very
right?
interesting.
Right, which is basically for me that I come in and say that, look, I have got a freaking market to build a large company. Yes, could it have been better? Could this growth be this? Could this that? It's all victim mindset. I can definitely, if I innovate, execute well, which is a big if, because we might not, right? But if I, innovate, execute well, we can build a very large company. Why not? So, I personally believe that we're not dependent on externalities to be able to deliver ABC. 90% of our destiny is our own execution. Hopefully we execute. There's no guarantee that we'll be able to execute that well, but that's what I try to do all day, right? And what I'll say the last thing that I'll say is that, you look at 6, 7, 8% GDP growth, whatever you say, everyone's like, will we grow at this much, etc., all of that. The reality is that we have to freaking deliver that growth. The private sector, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is on us. I don't believe it's on the government. It is on all of us, whether it is, Zepto, whether it is, Grow, whether it is even, Hindustan Unilever, Bharti Airtel, right? We have to pull up our socks and figure out how to innovate and get more consumption going, right? Like that's what's, and if there's lack of infrastructure, we have to be the guys who build that infrastructure, right? So I think that, I believe, and I could be wrong, the government is making the right assessment that what really creates enduring growth is dynamism in the private sector, entrepreneurs, talented individuals getting together and looking to build exciting things. That's how most developed countries have been built, right? If you look at the past century or so. And so if you go with that mindset that we have to deliver the 7% growth, like if Zepto grows, and let's say we raised $1 billion round last year, very small, but it had some very, very small minuscule impact on the economy. And now we've grown from like having 30,000-40,000 people, 30,000-40,000 people that have a livelihood to like over 120,000 people that have a livelihood. Again, very small. 80,000 people in the grand scheme of things is minuscule. But one company can do that, and let's say there are 100 other companies that do that, that'll start making a difference.
But will it make the market smaller when we have new true friends like Amazon, Tej, Flipkart Minutes coming up in the market?
No. I think the market is, like I mentioned, right? That market that of like around 150 billion is big enough for quite a few folks, right? And I've not taken in growth, I've not taken in more innovation, right? That we figure out along the way, like, because we're innovating. If we execute well, we'll be able to do a pretty good amount of, top line, bottom line. Big if, and the question that I'd be asking is, will you execute well? Who knows? We'll see in the next couple of years. Yeah, I think there's going to be plenty of room for well-executed, high-quality companies to build very large outcomes in this space in the next 5 years. And if we don't do it, it'll be purely attributable to our own failures and shortcomings. But I don't think. Hopefully, I think we'll be able to do it.
So do you know Anu? Of course, you know Anu Hariharan. I was just saying that she invested in Zepto through the YC Continuity Fund.
Yes.
And then she started another fund.
Yeah.
She also invested through that.
Yes, she did.
How did you end up meeting her? How did you end up convincing her?
Anu is, I think, one of the best growth equity investors in the world in internet. She's invested in the early stages in iconic companies, DoorDash. She's invested in companies like, Whatnot. There's a few other like very high quality US companies that she's invested in. I would say that she was at Y Combinator. She was one of the early checks in the company, and she's been a mentor ever since. And then when she started her own fund, I really just wanted her on our cap table because I said, Anu's given us like the best advice and guidance, at least in that field that she specializes in, which is like building, high growth consumer internet companies. She's seen many of those companies. She was at Andreessen Horowitz as well. By the way, she's from Bombay, right? Or I think, but she's from Coimbatore. She's lived a while in Bombay, but she's amazing. And so I think she liked the company because she knew us very well, and so she was willing to invest. What I had to do was, the round that we were closing last year, we were oversubscribed, but I had to create like a lot of space for her because I said I will prioritize, Anu's capital before anyone else's because she's, I think, one of the most thoughtful investors that I've met to date, and candidly, and I'm sure a lot of your or viewership is our investors, right? But investors can be sometimes a little bit volatile individuals, right? A little bit slightly more emotions driven than numbers driven. Anu, on the other hand, is very sharp, uh, very savvy investor, and obviously she's been super successful as a result of that. Not many people can just raise a multi-$100 million fund off the bat. She can because of her reputation and her track record.
मैं आपकी एक इंटरव्यू देख रहा था जिसमें आपने बताया था Suvir sir was the first guy who came in as an institutional investor, right?
Yep.
And you mentioned that we spent so many hours about learning about so many things from Suvir sir. And then there was this also story that there was an analyst from Nexus who called you. Who was that analyst?
Yeah, Arjun Gandhi.
So Arjun called you. I want to know the story from this, and I want to learn certain things that you learned from Suvir sir.
Yeah, I mean, I think, long story short, Suvir, he was only interested in what customers had to say in the early days, right? He just wanted to go talk to customers. He went on a bike, went and delivered, and he's obviously like a extremely...
He went and delivered the...
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He's a very accomplished, almost like elder statesman in the internet ecosystem, right? But he just went on the ground, he wanted to talk to people. And that was how he got conviction that this really worked. And so for me, it was like, here's like such an experienced, well-respected investor, and all he cares about is customers. All I should care about is customers too, which is what we're doing. But yeah.
A lot of founders ask me to ask this. They run a D2C brand and they want to list at Zepto. And the challenge is, they're not able to do this. So if you were a founder, and if you really wanted to list at Zepto, and if you're not able to do this, what would you do, my friend?
So what I would do is, look, I think I would prove traction and customer love on my own and get a little bit of scale. And then with those data points, you'll be able to list. Right? Like if you're trying to list off the bat, it might not be as productive because we have a finite amount of space. And we want to see people that are serious, right? We want to, if we're investing that space, that finite space, we want to give it to the best potential, right? Best potential and the fastest growing brands. So if you can get that early, scrappy scale, which is hard, right? It's the hardest part is 0 to 1, like, right? But if you can get through that and you can show that, hey, I've got scale and I'm able to get customer love and people like the product, then you will keep increasing your likelihood of getting on Zepto for sure.
Very interesting. I want to understand your take on how these new celebrity brands are doing, like 82 Degrees, like Super You. How are these brands doing?
I can tell you Super You is recently launched. I think they're doing quite well. There are quite a few of them. I would say...
Name a couple of celebrity-led brands which are doing crazily well.
K for Katrina has obviously done really well on the Nykaa platform. Super You seems to be scaling pretty rapidly. I mean, at least their brand salience on the platform is quite high, just anecdotally. Yeah, I mean, look, I think, let me put it this way. I think these celebrity brands can do well, but nothing is going to replace solid execution, right? So if the strategy is to just put a celebrity and say this is the product, no, you have to build a great product, and the celebrity will definitely add value in enhancing its trust, it's enhancing the speed of which it can be adopted by customers. But you still need to build a great product, great manufacturing muscle, great distribution, great packaging. Everything has to be good.
मैं देख रहा था a couple of interesting ways companies hack their growth. So for example, I was just reading that Zomato, and I may be completely wrong on this, figured out that they used to run ads on porn websites.
Really?
Yeah. I may be completely wrong on this. But I want to know from, because these choti koi bhi case study bana deta hai that comes to your feed and you have no way to verify what. So they figured out this insight ki, people feel hungry and that's why they'll run ads on porn or something like that. Let's scrap this. I want to know a couple of cool growth hacks that you use in your Zepto.
But scrap the whole part thing, it's probably not true. I'm 150% sure it's not true. So
sorry about it.
No, don't worry about it. But yeah, I think like they would never risk that. Anyway, so yeah, no, I can tell you. So why don't you re-ask the question on growth hacks?
Tell me a couple of super interesting growth hacks that you have never shared till now, which helped Zepto.
Growth hacks for sure. Look, I think this whole gift box thing is a big growth hack. I mean, it gives us a good value. I think we've got like referral loops that we've built like a good amount of optimization on. So like giving people an incentive to refer their friend, but doing it much deeper so that you get the right customers. Like we do it like on location, like we tag locations where you want to acquire new customers and run referral campaigns there. That does well. quite a few things. When you launch a new city, we get like delivery drivers to just like ride around the city in Zepto uniforms, right? So we do all sorts of like fun stuff. But yeah, I mean the major thing is how to get someone to download the app. Obviously, a good chunk of that will be organic, but a good chunk of that will also be paid in performance marketing. So yeah.
There are some people that say there are a lot of dark patterns on Zepto app. What's the most interesting dark pattern that you have built?
I mean, I don't think we intentionally go to build dark patterns, but I think like, look, we have historically had the lowest delivery fee order value, right? Like if you get Zepto Pass and it's a low subscription, you get free delivery above 99 unlimited. And so, look, I think, and even if you look at things that we've launched like Super Saver, we're trying to give back as much value to the customer, right? So Super Saver also pretty attractive prices. We've got like the free delivery construct that's running. We're going to launch something new, which I can't talk about, but that's also going to give some good prices to customers, right? But even more and more price value. So the philosophy has always been to try to give value back. Obviously, we do charge, right? And there's going to be parts about it, and sometimes people are not happy about 10 rupee handling fee going to 12 rupees, right? Which I understand.
They say sometimes that, so for example, you're charging GST on the handling fees, or sometimes you don't know, a customer doesn't know that he's being charged. The default option, even if you qualify for free delivery, the default option is that you pay for the delivery.
Yeah.
I'm talking about dark patterns like that.
For sure, no. I think the delivery couponing that we did mainly is just to our thought process was, how do we get people to register that we are actually the platform giving a lot of free delivery, right?
Okay.
So a lot of people were, at least when you spoke to customers, a lot of people were forgetting that, right? And they were just like, yeah, I just check out, and I didn't really realize. And so when most people, by the way, I think like the vast majority of people anyway apply it, right? Which is fine. And we make it a little bit clear for them to say like, hey, please make sure you apply the free delivery thing. But when you do that, then people remember that, hey, this guy is actually giving free delivery, right? And so the next time that they're thinking of buying something, they're like, okay, I remember that I got free delivery because I remember pressing the button. The other platform doesn't have the button, but that's also because they don't give free delivery, right? So that was mainly the thinking behind it. It shows up in the numbers also on frequency and retention, but we don't really get much out of that. By the way, most people press the button anyway. But it's okay. I mean, I think there's going to be misconceptions. There's like this whole misconception on iOS, Android, right? It's a total misconception. It's not true.
It's not true?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with iOS, Android. We are running a couple of pricing experiments to test the elasticity of certain products, right? And so we ran an experiment in Bangalore just to try to test elasticity. We have an experiment running in a couple of other cities. We're basically just trying to identify like what's the mathematical equation behind like the demand supply of every specific product, so we can give the right equilibrium to the customer, right? And so in those experiments, sometimes people see different prices, which is why this sort of blew up. But honestly, in like a month or so, it'll be completely gone. Less than that. In a few weeks, it'll be all completely gone. But we're just running these experiments to establish these data sets that, okay, what is the right way to price it for the customer? Eventually, all these experiments are done in benefit to the customer. In the meantime, obviously, some people misunderstand it, but that's not our intent.
What is one hack that you have figured out to increase the frequency of the customer?
So personalized CRM. So like the push notifications you get, they're now all personalized to your data. So I'll know that you might be at like 5-6 p.m. craving bananas. So I'll send you notification, Shivank, 6 p.m. on the dot. Why don't you grab a banana, right? And the CTR of that, or the click-through rate of that, is much higher, right? And so those personalized like comms is a great example.
Give me examples that people don't talk about, but you have figured out.
This free delivery thing is another recent one, right? Where getting someone to click on something makes them remember and register it more than just giving it to them very simply, right? So you have to make people, when you're giving someone that value, you say, listen, make sure you give me the credit for the value that I'm giving you, right? So that registration is good. We give out all these like goodies, not just give boxes, but we give people incentives to like give a larger basket, where we say, okay, if you go above 699 rupees, we'll give you sugar at 5 rupees, for example, right? And it doesn't actually cost us much, but customers really get engaged by that, right? So that's another good one. All sorts of things. Like we put the scores of the cricket match sometimes on the homepage. People open it for that. All sorts of stuff.
And where do you get ideas? Do you look for research papers? Do you look for competitors? Or how do you get
just talk to
ideas?
Customers.
But customer won't tell you, if you give me sugar for 5 rupees, I'll just...
No, but that's the idea. So you have to be really good at customer interviews. It's a muscle that we've built, or we're building at Zepto. You have to be really good at customer interviews, where you come in and say, okay, I am going to figure out the product that I can build from this insight, right? So if a customer comes in and says, I don't have much to, why would I build a larger basket on Zepto? Then you say, okay, how do I give this person a reason to do that, right? On sugar, for example. So you have to build the the right scenario tree. That's why you should read this book, Thinking in Systems, right? You have to build the right tree to get like an insight from someone's just like offhand comment, but you can.
There was this reel which was getting viral. Not viral, but I just saw this reel where they were talking about Zepto's third co-founder. And he was talking about Ansh Nanda.
Yeah. So how long ago was that?
Recently, there are 1-2 reels like this.
Oh, yeah.
So I really want to know who was the Zepto's third co-founder.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I can't really talk about it. What I will say though is that what I find particularly interesting, I guess it's not unique to India, but it's also in the US. But like when people go, or when companies or anything, companies, people, teams, whoever it is, right, go through like fast rises, there's a lot of schadenfreude, right? People deliberately want to figure out like what's the catch, etc. A lot of people come in and say, for example, that I've raised all this money from my dad, and my dad would find this very funny to hear, right? Because he actually, he actually did give us a dollar, right? Like he basically said, oh, you want to build a business? Good luck. Like, you're going to learn the hard way. 2022, right. 2023.
People were laughing when you were saying we'll build the Walmart, next Walmart.
Yeah, I would say that they were laughing, and I think that's fine. And I think that, look, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is freaking execution, right? Like, it's so good. That's the wonderful thing about life and building businesses, is that it really doesn't matter whether the other guy likes your face or not. If you execute exceptionally well, they have no option, right, to like your face or not.
Although I have so many questions मैं बता नहीं सकता that I missed. I think I only asked literally 20% of those. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get to learn more from you and
absolutely
continue these questions. Thank you so much. Genuinely grateful.
My pleasure.